It has been over a year since I started fasting, and I thought I'd do a little bit of a year in review of all the fun times, all the hard times, all the interesting connections I made while I've been fasting, all the benefits that I've realized, and even a few side effects that I did not anticipate when I began my journey. Now, the reason I started doing intermittent fasting was because my eating habits were out of control. I wanted to regain some control of how and what and when I was eating. But all of those attributes were out of control, right? I was eating all the time, and when something would come in the way of me eating, that's when I would blow up on people. I took it out on people. I took it personally. I ate at places where I wasn't supposed to, right? I would often want to sneak food into various places that didn't allow you to bring outside food. Not that I ever got in trouble for that, but it was didn't feel right to do that. Let's put it that way. I was eating when I really shouldn't be, when I really needed to, when I was running late for a meeting and I really needed to go. I would often miss out on going out on a date because I was strung out from wanting to eat whatever I wanted to eat at the moment. What else? You get the idea. I wanted to regain control. I wanted to continue eating, but I wanted to regain control of when and where and how I was eating. Basically, is how I would put it. Okay, so I started by going on 12 to 16 hour fast, and then we had a couple interesting holidays. I did one at the beginning of Lent last year. I might do it again. This time maybe I'll get a little bit closer to the 40 days. So, well, maybe not 40, but you get the idea. Now, the very first benefit I realized from intermittent fasting during that Lent fast last year, go back and watch that video if you're curious, was the second day of the fast. So 24 hours or so, actually 36 hours into the fast, I remember just a big sense of peace wash over me. I no longer had to be controlled by my eating activities. I could actually focus on my job. I could, my car didn't become a mess from me eating. I used to spend a lot of time in my car, right? I didn't have to worry about brushing my teeth. What else? I didn't have a mess in my mouth. My hands were a whole lot cleaner. This was before we had to compulsively wash our hands, right? This was February of 2020. And even then I realized how clean my hands were if I didn't eat all the time. And it also just reduced the necessity of having to wash my hands now that I wasn't putting them in my mouth. So a big sense of peace washed over me that second day. Now the problem is that on the third day of that fast, I came to discover a minor drawback of the fasting, which was that I didn't have another bowel movement. And it's weird, every time I go on a long-term fast like that, 48 plus hour fast, it's not so much the food that I miss anymore, it's all the peripherals that go around food, right? The social environment of sitting down to eat, the bowel movements that accompany eating after you eat. What else? The entire complex of how eating fits into your day, right? On the way home, I want to go to my favorite restaurant, or maybe I have somebody that I know at the grocery store, and well, grocery store is a little bit easier. I can go there to get other things and maybe meet up, but people know me for stuff that I love to eat, and it's always the little peripherals that get me at the end. It's never, I want something in my mouth, in my stomach. Never. It's weird. Well, sometimes they do, but I would say the peripherals are the bigger driving force. Okay. And then we went into quarantine. My first day of that quarantine, I went to a grocery store, QFC, to go look for my favorite kielbasa sausages to kind of take my mind off of what was going on. But they were sold out. because everybody was panic shopping. And I went to another grocery store and they were sold out. And I went to another grocery store and they were sold out. And as I was traveling in between those grocery stores, my mom had called me and she was concerned for me. She wanted to know if I had a place to stay. I did. I mean, my mom sometimes underestimates my ability to take care of myself. She wanted to overnight me some supplies if I needed them, especially toilet paper. And then she heard all this commotion that I couldn't find my kielbasa sausages, and she wanted to overnight some to me too. And I told her, no, don't worry about that. I need to control my eating much better than I am anyhow. You see, one reason I haven't gone home to my family in recent times, aside from the quarantine and keeping my family safe, aside from that, is that my mom worries if I have enough to eat. I worry if I have so much to eat that I destroy my life. And it's just not very compatible. And I don't blame my mom. She grew up during a major conflict in Taiwan where having enough to eat was still a big problem, right? Just like how having enough time for me to fast is a big problem for me, right? Different times, different conflicts. And unfortunately, we'll never see each other on the same page there. I don't even like to call my family anymore because they keep bringing up me eating and they're worried about my eating disorder when I fast, right? And that's a big problem. Okay, so that was March. Now, in April, now we're a month into the quarantine, and I remember just how liberating everything was, right? Even though we were locked up in home, I had a favorite trail that I loved to walk and record videos there. And I remember for the first time in my life, I actually walked the entire trail end to end. And I was thinking to myself, how did I do this? In the past, I've never seen the entire trail. And then I realized, because I couldn't in the past, I would get a food craving and I want to get out of that trail. And that's when I realized, that's when the light bulb went off, how much of my eating disorder was controlling me. And that was a big impetus. In June, we had the CHAZ, Capitol Hill Autonomous Zone, protests in Seattle, where we chanted Single Lives Matter, right? Well, actually black, but I chanted Single Lives Matter because it was also my anniversary. June 13th was the first date I went as a single guy. I call it a solo sexual date in 2010. What was really nice was that when I was high on fasting, I had been fasting 24 hours when I went to that protest. I felt so good. Nothing could bother me. Loud noises like that used to be a big problem for me. Loud environments, things I disagreed with, those used to be a big problem with me. But when I was high on fasting, they were a lot easier to tolerate. Not that I liked them anymore, but they were so much easier to tolerate. They slid off of my back, is how I would like to put it. And then we had, on the 4th of July, I went to Vantage, Washington to view a lunar eclipse. What was really nice was that when I was a kid, one of my favorite songs was Saturday in the Park by Chicago. Saturday in the Park. I think it was the 4th of July. And to spend Saturday, 4th of July, 2020 at a park, that's all I wanted to sing when I was there. I rewrote some of the words. People spreading out 6 feet apart, wearing a mask, right? Worried about every cough. And I Black Lives Matter, Blue Lives Matter. I wrote some new words to the song based on the events of that year. But you see, crowds like that used to bother me a lot. But when I was fasting, I had been fasting, I think, another 24 hours or so on the 4th of July. Things like that slid right off of me. 9/11, I went on another fast, this time for over 2 days, to commemorate, to memorialize the loss of 2996 of our people. So I fasted for 2996 minutes, and I felt so good. I felt so good when I was in Missoula at the time, and I actually walked quite a distance on the trail at that point. Now, it was the 9/11 fast when I really became addicted to fasting. What had happened was that I had fasted for 29.96 minutes, maybe a little bit more than that. And I broke the fast because I was feeling lightheaded and everything. But as soon as I broke the fast, I ate not a very big meal. I would say 800 to a 1,000 calorie meal. Wasn't anything out of control. But as soon as I ate it, I fell asleep. And then when I woke up, I kicked myself. I was like, man, if I had just hung in there for another 45 minutes and went to sleep, I could have had another 8 hours under my belt. I really kicked myself. And so I really despised eating after that. Okay, in October, I went back to Seattle to take care of a couple meetings. And I booked an Airbnb in a suburb of Seattle. And I was fasting like crazy. I was living with 2 other roommates. And I was fasting like crazy because every night when I would want to break the fast, I reminded myself what happened on 9/11. And so I went 2.5 days without eating that time, and I vomited into the toilet. And because I kept kicking myself over what happened September 11th. Actually, it might have been September 13th. Now, my roommate was so grossed out that he didn't want to use the toilet. And he was urinating into this container and pouring it out at the back door, and I liked it. You would think that would gross me out, but I loved having that toilet to myself. And so the following week, I went another 2 days without food, and I vomited back into the toilet again. And I learned it's called worshiping the porcelain goddess, because you're worshiping that toilet. I love it for some reason. I love that phrase. And I love the fact that it makes everybody want to social distance from me. I love that part especially. Kind of selfish of me now looking back. But those were not terribly good roommates that I was living with, so I'm not feeling too guilty about that. I live in my own unit now, but we have very nice neighbors. I would never do any of that to those people. But my roommate, he had some pretty gross habits himself. I mean, I disliked how he handled the quarantine. He stayed home, drinking, binge eating, watching TV. If he can do that, he can put up with a little bit of vomiting, right? Maybe next he'll drink bleach after I vomit, right? That's the kind of person he is, right? Then we went into the holiday season. I traveled here to Wallace. I love it here. People live and let live. You see, when I tell my neighbors, we get together, people aren't so worried about COVID-19 here. When we get together and people bring out food and I tell them I'm fasting, that's the end of the story, right? See, I used to work at a tech giant, and we had this policy that they never really banned coworkers from dating each other. Not that I would think it's a good idea. They never banned it. We had a policy that you can only ask once, right? And if they say no, you have to accept it. See, I wish we would have the same policy for food. I really do. I really do. But here in Idaho, everybody follows that policy anyway, right? If I took a job here, it wouldn't have to be listed in the handbook, right? And I went to a couple of Christmas festivals. Again, didn't have to worry about telling people that I'm fasting. Anyways, so I've been doing intermittent fasting for about a year now. I hope to do another one at the beginning of Lent because I made some good memories there. On the anniversary of us declaring the pandemic, obviously, on March 11th. March 11th is already a pretty sad day because we had Fukushima and now COVID-19. And what else? What other fasts am I looking forward to? Valentine's Day, obviously, right? As a solosexual, I'm a little bit torn for this Valentine's Day. Now, some people get torn between 2 other people. I'm torn between being solosexual and this girl, right? I wish. One of the reasons I love anti-aging, intermittent fasting, and even when I'm not fasting, taking in foods that keep my body young, antioxidants, is that I wish we had more time for life's crucial decisions, right? So I meet a girl And it feels like I only have 6 months, a year to decide if we're marriage material. I really despise it. I wish we had 10, 20 years. I really do. Yes, I know it sounds crazy, but in the ideal world, right? I also wish, see, if we live to be 1,000 years old, we could have 10 relationships in our lifetime, right? 5 with ourselves and 5 with a partner, right? That would be ideal. That would be the ideal relationship profile for me, right? I get married 5 times to somebody else during my lifetime, and I have 5 periods of being solo sexual. But life just comes way too fast, right? So we got another 3 weeks until Valentine's Day, and my mind is a mess from thinking about this. Yeah, that's sad. Anyways, and also June 10th of 2021, we have a solar eclipse. I hope we get to travel. Fingers crossed. Fingers crossed. I've been having to view a lot of these things virtually now, which is nice. I get to mingle with a lot of people that I would have never chatted with online. Fingers crossed. But it's in Edmonton, and I'm thinking that's about the day that I'll make my decision, whether it be being solo sexual or otherwise, right? And I'll definitely go on another 48-hour fast. Hopefully I won't vomit at the end. Anyways, I made a lot of memories. I made a lot of friends. I made a lot of interesting stories. I connected with people. I learned a lot during the fast. And I think a big problem when a lot of people try these lifestyle changes, whether it be fasting, whether it be they need to control their smoking or drinking problems, is that they focus too much on what they give up, right? Focus on the new stories. Thanks for watching.